Low levels of serotonin often correlate to having premature ejaculation. Having low levels of dopamine usually manifests as low sexual desire, low sensitivity of the genitals, and inability to feel aroused. Low levels of acetylcholine correlate to an inability to having erections. High levels of norepinephrine are linked with sexual anxiety and premature ejaculation. So these are four important neurotransmitters that have a very profound effect on male sexual arousal, ability to have orgasm. The ability to control your ejaculation, like how long you're going to last, is often determined by the level of these neurotransmitters within your body. So in this video, we're gonna dive deep into these four important neurotransmitters, how they affect your arousal response, and most importantly, how you can balance, harmonize these together, and maximize the levels that you want of these important neurotransmitters so you have optimal sexual function, great ejaculation control, and highest sexual pleasure. How does that sound? Let's get into it. I'm Jonathan White. I've helped thousands of men from around the world just like you learn to master their sexual energy and manifest their ideal life. Make sure you hit subscribe to stay informed when I drop new content like this, and get my free ejaculation control ebook in the description of this video. So the first neurotransmitter we're going to look at is serotonin. This is often associated with mood, like having a positive, balanced mood. How this affects arousal, I'm going to be using the metaphor of a car here. Serotonin corresponds to the brakes. When it comes to sexual function, it slows things down. Men with a very high level of serotonin tend to have difficulty becoming aroused. Some men who have seriously delayed ejaculation, they may have extra high serotonin. And it's also well known that serotonin medications, like SSRIs, they actually make it difficult for men to achieve orgasm. On the other side of the spectrum, if you have low serotonin, then ejaculation control becomes very difficult. Sexual excitement gets easily out of control and you ejaculate very quickly. So with all these neurotransmitters, having too much or too little can be problematic. So we want to find a sweet spot. It's very interesting. 90% of your serotonin is produced in the intestines, in the gut. If you have a shit diet, if you're eating processed foods, if you're eating all these refined carbohydrates, lots of sugars, alcohol, if you're taking antibiotics, it completely disrupts your gut microbiome, and you're probably going to have issues creating proper levels of serotonin. Other things that deplete serotonin are stress, vitamin D deficiency, not getting enough sunlight, social isolation. All these things can contribute to serotonin deficiency. And I'm gonna get to some simple things you can do, and especially some supplements that will quickly help you rebuild your serotonin levels towards the end of this video, so stick around for that. So now let's talk about dopamine. I think this is one that most people are familiar with. And I'm also going to explain why I have these different color coding of the neurotransmitters. Once I get through them, I'll explain how these are yin-yang pairs. Dopamine is the reward chemical. It's usually the neurotransmitter people are the most familiar with because we hear about it a lot more in the modern world. It's released when you do something that feels like a reward or something pleasurable, essentially. It really is the pleasure neurotransmitter. And this has been greatly hijacked in the modern world because when you spend a lot of time on social media, especially if you're watching porn, your body's being stimulated an unnatural level of dopamine release, and it actually burns out your dopamine supply. Plus it desensitizes your brain's dopamine receptors. So when it comes to sexual function, dopamine is the accelerator. This is the neurotransmitter of excitement, of yes, let's do it. And it's the opposite of serotonin. So this is a yin-yang pair, serotonin and dopamine, when it comes to sexual function. And I think an easy way to think about this is like, there's two friends, all right? There's two friends hanging out. The dopamine friend's like, hey, there's this party going on, like let's run down there, let's take some drugs, let's bang some girls, let's have a great time, man, let's just go crazy. And the serotonin is saying, hey man, slow down, slow down. What impact would this have on how we feel tomorrow? What would our spouses think about this, etc.? So it's kind of like the logical, hey, should I really do this? Whereas dopamine is that part of you that's like, let's go for it. And these neurotransmitters can have an effect on that type of behavior for you. But dopamine is very much associated with arousal, sexual desire, orgasmic capacity, and even your sensitivity to pleasure. Just talking about these two neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, you want to have this balance between them. Because if you have too much serotonin, not enough dopamine, you will not experience arousal. You'll have a difficult time feeling aroused, feeling pleasure. If you have too much dopamine and not enough serotonin, you're going to be over-aroused, over-sexually excited, and have an easy time just ejaculating way too quickly, which is common for men, especially who are watching a lot of porn. So it seems like it's more common for men to have low levels of serotonin, to be a little more dominant in the dopamine neurotransmitter. Whereas women, it's often the exact opposite, because for men, it's ideal to have a bit higher serotonin level to control ejaculation. But for women, they tend to have excessive serotonin and low dopamine. It's very common for women these days to be very sexually uninterested. It's becoming more and more common. And so for women, lowering their serotonin and increasing their dopamine can help increase both their libido and their ability to be orgasmic. Now, we haven't even gotten into the other two transmitters. We'll get there. Things that tend to deplete your dopamine levels: stress. Stress is number one, and stress is also dietary. Poor diet, toxins in your food supply. This is really interesting. As I was diving into the research of all this, what really stood out to me of what I found was that heavy metals and molds and fungus in the body, in the sort of inflaming toxic compounds, they tend to skew these neurotransmitters in the opposite way you want them to go. Detoxification is extremely important for sexual health. Poor sleep disrupts proper dopamine levels. And once again, your diet has a big impact on this. If you're eating processed foods, a lot of refined carbohydrates, eating lots of sugar specifically causes these huge spikes and crashes in your dopamine levels. But one of the most important things I want to talk about, which I already brushed upon a bit, is the fact that modern technology has hijacked our dopamine system. And so what happens is when you're spending time on social media, don't even get me started on porn, which is the ultimate dopamine destroyer. What's happening is that, again, you're getting this hit of dopamine. People are often like hating on dopamine, like you shouldn't do anything that releases dopamine. It's not true. It's just when there's this artificial excessive stimulation of dopamine through social media, getting all these notifications, constantly checking your messages, your comments, especially watching porn. It causes these spikes in dopamine that the body starts to say, hey, something's off here. We're not supposed to have this level of dopamine. It actually cranks down, it shuts down the sensitivity of your dopamine receptors, meaning that your body does not respond to dopamine in the same way that it did. So you actually need more and more dopamine to feel just a normal baseline. When you're no longer doing these overstimulating activities, you simply cannot get enough dopamine release from normal day-to-day things. So this is the most important, I think the most relevant thing in the modern world, along with poor diet and exercise. Proper exercise is also essential for balancing your neurotransmitters, especially dopamine. Exercise is a great way to naturally boost your dopamine. Combining this desensitization through excessive screen use, plus poor diet and toxicity and inflammation in the body, like it's no wonder why people are very depleted in their desirable neurotransmitters. So dopamine is primarily produced in the brain, the hypothalamus and other regions of the brain, but actually to some degree it's also created in other regions of the body as well, specifically in the kidneys, which is very interesting because from my studies in Chinese medicine, they talk about Jing, kidney energy being related to our sexual vitality, and dopamine is a major aspect of that. So I feel from the view of Chinese medicine that dopamine is an expression of your kidney energy and your Jing. In fact, I think all the neurotransmitters are Jing, vital essence. And that brings us to acetylcholine. In this metaphor of a car, dopamine's the accelerator, serotonin's the brake. Well, acetylcholine is the engine. Now, acetylcholine is the main neurotransmitter of the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the rest and digest response. Most people in the modern world are sympathetic nervous system dominant. They're in a fight or flight state all the time. They're super stressed out, which means that they often have a low level of acetylcholine. Why I say this is the engine is because what acetylcholine does is it sends a message throughout your body saying, we're okay, we're safe right now. There's not a saber-toothed tiger trying to eat us right now. Like we can relax and chill. And so it's essentially this messenger of like, it's okay to relax, we're safe right now, essentially. And when that signal is being sent, then the body functions more efficiently. Digestion, hormonal balancing, etc. But most relevant to sexual function, the dilation of blood vessels and the relaxation of muscles and soft tissues in the body. Guess what's required for an erection? Blood flow and the relaxation of soft tissues. You may notice if you're really tense and uptight and nervous, you can't get an erection because your acetylcholine is shut off. It doesn't matter if you have sexual desire and excitement if you can't get erect. Physically, if you cannot get blood to flow into your penis, you're not really gonna be able to have sex, right? So acetylcholine is extremely important. Acetylcholine is produced throughout your entire nervous system by cholinergic, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but basically nerves that produce this throughout your entire system. And that brings me to an interesting point is that these things are called neurotransmitters, which makes us have this impression that like this is all like happening in the brain. But actually this is a whole body process. The neurotransmitters are produced throughout the entire body. It's not just a communication with the brain, it's this entire full body communication, which I feel when we see with this model, we can understand what like a lot of Eastern traditions are talking about. Again, Chinese medicine, they see the whole body as connected and communicating through meridians, through the nervous system and through these subtle energy channels. So it's just, when we stop being so brain-centric and see that this is a whole body process, we can actually be a lot more successful in balancing all these things. And if I didn't already have your attention, remember, acetylcholine is the main neurotransmitter responsible for producing erections. Because yeah, nitric oxide is important, but that's another process that's a level down from acetylcholine. If your acetylcholine is lacking in the first place, then there will never be the signal to release that nitric oxide to have an erection. And I'm going to tell you exactly what you can do to significantly boost your dopamine towards the end of this video, so stick around for that. So the most significant things that deplete your acetylcholine levels, once again, number one is stress. Stress is the main killer of most things. It's the biggest boner killer, and it's the biggest disruptor to your health. Too much screen time as well significantly disrupts your acetylcholine system. And once again, a poor diet contributes to acetylcholine, specifically if you're not getting enough choline in your diet. I'll tell you how you can get more choline and some specific supplements for that later in this video. A lack of B vitamins as well, which basically like not having the raw materials you need to produce the neurotransmitters. And so now that brings us to norepinephrine. And so once again, there's this yin-yang pair between acetylcholine and norepinephrine. As far as our car metaphor, there's two things we could say that acetylcholine does. And I think it's more appropriate to call it, I'm just gonna put a big X here and say norepinephrine. It's the emergency brake. Because once again, acetylcholine and norepinephrine are this yin-yang pair. You need to have both of them because looking at the nervous system, we could talk about sympathetic and parasympathetic, basically calm, rest and digest, everything's okay, versus like there's a threat, I need to protect myself. I need all hands on deck. I need adrenaline pumping so that I can fight this thing or I can run away from it. In the context of sexual function, why I say this is an emergency brake is that there's an immediate threat. It's like, oh shit, like stop everything. We got to get out of here. That is kind of the vibe of norepinephrine. And what that looks like in sex is all of a sudden, I need to ejaculate right now. Oh shit. Or I'm losing my boner right now because if there's a saber-toothed tiger coming, I shouldn't be having sex. I should be running or fighting this thing. So that's what the job of norepinephrine is. So it's appropriate. It's part of the survival of being an animal is you need to have this defense mechanism. The problem is that in our modern world, we don't really have saber-toothed tigers anymore. We don't really need to worry about wild animals. Or for most of us, there's no real actual immediate physical threat. If you're living in a war zone or something, like, yeah, it's real. But for most of us, we actually never face any true physical dangers like our entire lives, really, right? This norepinephrine is pumping like never before. Even cavemen didn't have as much stress as we do in the modern world in certain ways, I truly feel. Because once again, it's social media, it's screen time, it's this overstimulation of our senses is keeping us in this high norepinephrine state. And norepinephrine essentially counteracts acetylcholine. So when you're constantly stressed out, you're constantly jacked up and overstimulated, it's shutting off your acetylcholine, shutting off your sexual function that you want, essentially. And norepinephrine is especially connected with the ejaculation process. Essentially, this is what happens when you ejaculate. The body has a release of norepinephrine. It's like, okay, it's time, like bust low. We got to knock this lady up before something eats us. Okay, hurry. You simply cannot ejaculate without this release of norepinephrine. And so when we're talking about this one, this isn't one that we want to boost, okay? I don't think many people in the modern world are going to be low in norepinephrine. Yes, that can be a condition, but it's going to be pretty rare. Most of us want to lower its effect on our bodies. And once again, this emergency brake thing is like, with norepinephrine, it's a very, very quick shift. If you've ever had an experience during sex where like you're feeling great, you're super turned on, you're enjoying yourself, and then maybe something happens. Your partner says something, or they look at you in a certain way, or there's something, and all of a sudden, either like you're ejaculating right away, or like your dick goes limp and you're withdrawing. There's that tension response. That's norepinephrine. That's the signal that's creating within your body. So what causes norepinephrine release? I mean, I already said stress is the main thing. So managing stress is so important for this. Caffeine and stimulants also directly, they straight up release norepinephrine. So if you're already like stressed out and tired and you're like feeling yourself on caffeine, it's just gonna put you deeper and deeper on this downward spiral with an overly responsive stress response. Getting poor sleep, and specifically a high sugar diet, a high refined carbohydrate diet is shown to like really boost your norepinephrine levels. So clean up your diet, de-stress a little bit, okay? And I think one of the best things for balancing all neurotransmitters in general is to have a meditation practice where you have some sort of practice where you're sitting quietly, you're not running over to-do lists and having all the shit you need to do. You're quiet. You're there. You're still. That's one of the best things you can do for your neurotransmitters. So all of these things work synergistically. From my Chinese medicine and Qigong perspective, I see this yin-yang dynamic. It's not that like, oh, I need all dopamine and acetylcholine, I need no norepinephrine. It's yin-yang balance. If you're too yang, you need more yin. If you're too yin, you need more yang. It's gonna be different for everybody, okay? Acetylcholine it gets the engine going. It gets the blood flowing, the relaxation of tissues so that you can become physically erect. Dopamine is your motivation in the first place, the libido, the spark of desire, the thought of like, hey, I feel like some sex would be nice, let's do this. Serotonin is the brakes. It's like, hey, let's not get too excited. Let's not jump headfirst into this thing and just blow our load too soon. Let's slow down a little bit, okay? And obviously if you have too much of this, you're not gonna feel aroused. Too much dopamine, you're gonna be ejaculating too quickly. You have too much norepinephrine, because without any norepinephrine, like you're gonna feel overly fatigued, you wouldn't be able to like exercise and things like this. So you need some norepinephrine, but when you're dominant within that, again, shuts down blood flow, shuts down sexual function, you ejaculate quickly. So you want to balance all these things. And here's some different common sexual issues and how they relate to different like dynamics of these neurotransmitters. Premature ejaculation is usually low serotonin and high dopamine ratio. Erectile dysfunction can often involve low levels of acetylcholine or dopamine. Men who have delayed ejaculation or like just a very low sensation, like having a hard time feeling sexually pleasured, they tend to have higher serotonin levels and lower dopamine levels. And when you experience low libido, it's usually that you have low dopamine, or often your dopamine receptors are burned out, they're desensitized. Let's talk about how to boost all these important neurotransmitters, specifically serotonin, dopamine, and acetylcholine, the ones we really want to focus on. So serotonin is derived from tryptophan. Tryptophan is an amino acid that the body metabolizes into serotonin. Foods that are rich in tryptophan include turkey, chicken, eggs, and nuts. So you want to include more of that in your diet. Complex carbohydrates are also good, eating things like sweet potatoes. And remember, gut health is everything for your serotonin production. So taking probiotics, balancing your gut health, stop eating sugars and refined carbohydrates and antibiotics. And there's 3 supplements you can take that will directly support your serotonin levels. The main one is 5-HTP. I recommend getting it derived from griffonia seed, which is a natural nature source of 5-HTP, which again metabolizes into serotonin in your body. You also want to make sure you're getting your B vitamins and vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiency is also often linked to low serotonin. For dopamine, there's an amino acid called tyrosine that metabolizes into dopamine. The body needs this amino acid to create dopamine. Eggs, meat, and legumes apparently also are rich in tyrosine. You can also simply take a tyrosine supplement. Regular exercise is really important for healthy dopamine levels, getting plenty of sleep, avoiding stress. Motivation-based activities, like anything that gives you a sense of accomplishment, is going to give you a natural release of dopamine. And the more of those things you have in your life, the higher levels of dopamine you're going to have. And some supplements you can take to improve your dopamine levels. I already mentioned tyrosine, the amino acid. Again, get your B vitamins, which a lot of people are deficient in. There's also it's a type of legume called mucuna. Mucuna pruians, also known as velvet bean, which contains a compound called L-dopa, which is a precursor to dopamine. So I personally buy mucuna powder, and I take about half a teaspoon to a full teaspoon per day just to support my dopamine levels. And then for acetylcholine, choline is a compound in foods that the body, again, uses to produce acetylcholine. Eggs is one of the best sources of choline. Eating liver and fish are often good sources of choline. It's difficult to get a lot of these things when you're vegan. I'm just gonna say it straight up, which is why I think I felt so deficient when I was on a vegan and vegetarian diet for a long time. It's interesting to note that most medications are anticholinergic, meaning they disrupt your acetylcholine. Most pharmaceutical drugs disrupt this. So, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, I'm not a medical doctor, but I prefer to always take the most natural approach in my life, have a holistic as possible, so, do as you will with that information. There's some supplements you can take to boost your acetylcholine. Choline bitartrate is a common one. I personally take alpha GPC, which has been shown to be just a really well-absorbing form of getting choline. There's a supplement called huperzine, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, huperzine A, that helps to prevent your acetylcholine from breaking down too much. And there's another herb that's commonly promoted as a nootropic, which is bacopa. I don't know how to pronounce this stuff, I'm sorry guys. I'll make a list of everything I've talked about, and I'll make a list to the ones I personally use. And one more thought I have on this is that I think that these are an expression of Jing, Chinese medicine. And in sexual kung fu, we're all about being holistic. You can just try to biohack your way, let me just take some supplements and it's all good. But If you really look at the human body, you see that the more you can get to the root of why you have these deficiencies in the first place, which is usually poor lifestyle and diet. You correct these things. For example, I found it very interesting how a practice like Qigong, it works with your entire body, balancing your nervous system, moving subtle energy, moving blood through the whole body, and it supports your body's production of these compounds. An interesting overlap between modern science and like what the ancients knew. So this is all your gene. This is building your genes. So the more this physical essence that you have, the better you're going to be able to produce these neurotransmitters. There's actually even more important neurotransmitters that I haven't mentioned in this video that do have a strong effect on your sexual function. Let me know in the comments below if you want a sequel to this video where I talk about some of the other important neurotransmitters for your sexual health. And the next thing I recommend right now is checking out my sexual vitality optimization guide, where I go in depth into everything that you can do to dramatically support your sexual vitality. So check that video out. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel to stay updated on my new content, and wishing you much wellness, much vitality in your life. Take care, my friend.